It's 1:30 and let's get started. Hello all, good afternoon. Thank you for joining and I hope all of you had lunch and good lunch break. Right. So I am Sudhir and this is my colleague Ravinder. So today we are going to talk about the seamless discover, assess and modernize experience when you want to migrate your SQL servers that are on-premises into Azure SQL. Like I mentioned, I'm Sudhir. I work as Senior Product Manager for Microsoft for the Azure SQL Migration team. I've been with the databases and analytics platforms as a developer and a product manager for about 13 years. And this is my colleague Ravinder.
Thank you. So nice to see you all. I think it has been a long time after pandemic. This is the first time I'm presenting in person, so really thrilled for this session. And I am an engineering architect in Azure Databases team. And we work with customers like you day in, day out, helping them modernize their application. If there is a need to re-architect, refactor, so we go through the whole journey from the discovery assessment until we land them in Azure, and even then stabilize and sustain so that they get the best experience of Azure or our products which we have to offer. So Sudhir, over to you.
Thank you, Ravinder. So what are we going to learn today? We will talk about a lot of things, and most importantly, we will go through a lot of demos. This is going to be a demo-driven session. We will take you through the experience of all the tools that we have, right, through the different phases of migration. First, we'll start with the simplified SQL migration tooling ecosystem, and then we will talk about the end-to-end migration flow that I was referring to. We will go through a demo through each of the tool and each of the step involved in the process and tell you what are the different configurations available and how you can tweak it to meet your business needs. And then we'll talk about what are the new things we are coming up in the migration tooling ecosystem. And then we understand and acknowledge that everything cannot be solved by pre-built tools. There are areas where we need custom tools, custom solutions to modernize your stack. And to ensure that we give you enough information about it, we have a session by Ravinder which talks about the complex migration patterns and the most frequently used custom IPs that Microsoft has developed to solve those complex migration problems. Right. Now let's get started by discussing about what migration is all about. What are the different stages that are involved in migration? The decision makers in enterprises with a really large on-premises IT estate, especially when they are trying to migrate their estate from on-premises SQL Server into Azure, are faced with a lot of challenges. One, because the size of the estate, and then because of the complexities, dependencies that are there. In order for them to make decisions that are reasonable, first thing that they need to do is discover their entire on-premises estate, right? And then assess whether migration to cloud is going to give them the cost benefits that they intend to have. Right? Once they establish the business reason and the cost savings that they're going to get, they have to reach out to the leadership, get everyone on board, and then that's when the actual migration process starts. And before this gets started, they have to do a detailed assessment of their entire on-premises estate, and then identify what are the targets, Azure SQL targets that they need to move to. Right? And all of this is a very complex process. Wouldn't you love if all of this is automated and made available to you on your platter? Right? And that's exactly what we are doing with our tooling ecosystem. Right? Now, we will talk about once the assessments are done, the migration is not done yet. We have to do the actual data migration. And even after the data migration, we still have to continuously keep on monitoring the target databases to which we migrated to make sure whatever we provisioned is of correct size and is meeting your performance and cost business requirements. So it's a continuous process. Now, I've talked about 4 or 5 different steps. Over the years, we have developed tools that are purpose-built and address the needs of each of these phases. And we ended up having a lot of tools in this ecosystem, right? This has put burden on users. They're not very sure about which tool they should go to, which tool should be used for which phase of migration. So this has put a cognitive overload, and we want to simplify that. And how are we going to do that? We are bringing the richness and the goodness of good features that we have available across all these tools, consolidated into two tools. One, Azure Migrate, and the other is Azure Database Migration Service. Azure Migrate is going to help you with the discovery, assessment, and business plan features. And Azure Database Migration Service is actually going to help you with the actual data movement from on-premises to SQL Server. Once again, goodness and richness of all the features that are available across all the tools, consolidated and brought into two tools, which is Azure Migrate and Azure Database Migration Service. Now let us get a quick overview of what each of these tools does, and then we will go through the demos, the most exciting part, right? And before we go there, I just want to acknowledge one point, right? One common requirement across the board. It's not enough for us to develop one experience for each of those tools. We all are different personas. We would have a preference, inclination, or the business requirement to operate these across different experiences. So we have built these tools across different interfaces. You can either opt for Azure Portal, or you can operate these tools, or use these tools using Azure Data Studio, or PowerShell, or CLI. We have all these interfaces made available for you. Now let us get a very high-level overview of Azure Migrate. So it does the discovery. What does discovery mean? It identifies all the servers that exist on your on-premises estate. It inventories them, and then it keeps reading information from those SQL servers. What kind of information does it read? It reads the static metadata information, the suitability information, right? The features, what features exist on your on-premises SQL server, so on and so forth. And it also gets the performance data. Why do we need that? In order for Azure Migrate to give you a good recommendation, it needs to understand your workload patterns. It needs to understand how your resource utilization is looking like. And that's exactly what discovery is going to do. Now, before we actually go to the assessment and making a decision to migrate, like I mentioned, we need to establish a strong business case that the reason for us to migrate to cloud is cost, and we are getting the needed cost benefit. And that's what business case is going to provide. It's going to provide reports that gives you the cost information by various Azure SQL targets. It's also going to give information by breaking the cost into individual categories. What is the compute cost? What is the storage cost? What is the security cost, networking cost? So you'll have granular level of the costing information, cost breakup information. By looking at all of those, you will be able to make adjustments and tweak it, and then come up with a refined and more precise actual business costs and the benefits that you're going to get. And finally, assessment capabilities. The assessment capability uses the discovery data that we got in the first phase, and then it generates the readiness report. Right? For example, on the on-premises, you might have about 500 or 600 databases sitting under one server. That may not work for migrating to SQL MI as is, because MI doesn't support 500 databases or 600 databases. So for each, and there might be some on-premises features that are not present in Azure SQL or vice versa. Right? So the suitability information is something that the assessment would give. It also gives the readiness information for various targets, not just for the one you chose, but for all Azure SQL targets, so that you can analyze, pick, and choose what suits your requirements the best. All right, enough theory about this tool. Let us go to the demo and see how it actually looks like. So for demo purposes, we have pre-recorded the video. The reason being, each of these steps would take longer time, and playing them here would make us sit all day long, probably a couple of days. So we just want to make sure that we record the content and show it to you in a concise and time-bound fashion. To get started with Azure Migrate service, you can go to the Azure portal. If you do not have an account, all right, sorry.
I have a question.
Please.
Step 2, how much does it cost?
That's a great question. It's free of cost, and that's what I'm going to talk about now.
And how is it connected to the on-prem database? What do you have to do?
That's what I'm going to talk about in the next few minutes. We'll go through the experience, what it actually does, and how does it actually do the discovery, right?
You had a question.
Yes, please.
The slides and the videos that you're going to show next, are you going to have those available for us to download somewhere?
All right, they are already uploaded in the the PaaS Summit webpage. You can download them already. The videos and the slide, they're all uploaded. You can download them right now.
But where? Like, how do you, I don't know how to do that.
All right, we'll give you the link to the session, the PaaS Summit session, and you can download the contents from there. Actually, thank you for bringing up those questions. I forgot to mention one very important point. Please feel free to stop us at any point and ask any questions that you have, because these are content-intensive demos. So you might want to ask the questions that you have right then and there itself so that you don't forget them, because a lot of stuff is going to come your way. Right? So to get started with the Azure Migrate, go to the Azure portal. If you don't have an account, create an account, which is for free, and then create the Azure Migrate project under your subscription and resource group. You give the name and the geography where they're located and click on create. For demo purposes, we have pre-created this demo project because the project creation is going to take a couple of minutes. We want to show the simplified experience. Here is the project that we created already. Now we are ready to get started with discovery. To get started with discovery, click on the discover button over there. You can, the way discovery, you can upload the discovery information using two ways. One, by using an appliance, and by exporting or importing the data using a CSV file. Let us talk about the experience using the appliance. So the appliance, what is an appliance? Right? So it's a downloadable OVA file that you can create as a VM, download into your Hyper-V or vCenter, create a VM, and then what it does is it scans your entire network, identifies all the servers within the network, and inventories the software under all of the servers, right? Which is for free. You can download that for free. And before you get started with creating the appliance, you have to generate the key, which is going to be used to register your appliance with the Azure Migrate project. And why do we need that? Once the appliance collects all the discovery data, all of it gets associated with the project and gets uploaded to the cloud, using which we are going to create your assessments and business case. You can download the appliance either as an OVA file or a zip file to, yeah, please.
Good question. Where would you advise for us to run this from? Like, is this in the cloud service that you have to run and then connect to your on-prem? Or you have it to run it within the organization first and that goes to, how does that work?
Right. So you have to download this appliance into your on-premises infrastructure, because that's where it's going to connect and identify all the servers within your ecosystem. Right? That's what we want to discover. So download it to your local network. Right? And it's
Server or workstation, or it doesn't matter?
so yeah, it doesn't matter. Preferably, you download it and create it as a VM, which has network accessibility to all the servers within your infrastructure. Right? That is important. Now, appliance can get a little heavy. So if you can create a dedicated VM for that and then run it from there, you won't have any problems of resources getting consumed that are needed by appliance that are needed by other resources. So it's better to isolate them by creating a dedicated VM for the appliance and run it from there. Right? Yeah. So you can download that as an OVA file or the zip file. If you download it as an OVA file, you will create a VM using that, and it will start reading the information. So before it starts the discovery, what are the steps that we need to make sure that it is configured correctly and it is running correctly? So you have an appliance configuration page where you will enter the details about the servers that you want to discover within your infrastructure. And then you'll enter the server credentials, using which we will connect to all the servers and do the software inventory. And then you have to provide the credentials of the servers as well. When I say servers, the SQL Server or any other softwares that you're running, so that you can connect first inventory and connect to the servers that are running and fetch the information. Once you enter all the credentials, you can validate them to make sure that everything is working fine, and then you start the discovery process. Now, how long do I have to run the discovery process? That's a frequent, mostly asked question. The more, the merrier. right? It will identify everything that is available in the network instantaneously. But the whole point of discovery is to make sure that you're collecting enough information about the running softwares so that you can know what are the resource utilization patterns, you know what the resource consumption patterns, and give a recommendation based on that, right? So typically 24 hours is enough for the appliance to collect all the information that is needed to give accurate recommendations. But anything more than that is not going to be harmful, it's going to be beneficial for you. Right. Once the appliance is configured, you go back to the Azure Migrate and we kickstart the discovery process. Right. So in the discovery, when you get started with the discovery, actually assuming that the discovery has run already, you can see there are about 376 servers that are discovered. These 376 servers are the VM servers, out of which 101 are running SQL Server and 72 are running the web apps. And it also gives a further breakout by OS distribution. Out of these, about 272 are running Windows, about 76 are running Linux, and unknown are 26. Right? It gives you a breakout information by OS as well. Now let us go look at the servers that are running SQL Server instances. Right? That's what we are interested in now. Click on that number 101 and it will take you to a list view of all the SQL servers. And this gives information on about the SQL Server as well as the number of instances that are running under the SQL Server. Now if you click on the numbers over here, it will take you to the list of instances as well. And for each instance, we have the details like what is the version, instance name, the version on which it is running, about the license support, and how many databases are sitting under each of these instances, and whether each of these instances are connected to your Azure Migrate or not. That's important, right? You need to be connected to Azure Migrate to get all the data that is required for your discovery. You can click on the databases and you will see the list of databases as well. Let me take a pause here and to just summarize what we just saw, right? So right from the VM server, we have information all the way to the SQL Server, the instances underneath it, and the databases underneath it. And we have all the information, static information that is needed. And what you don't see here is the performance data and suitability data that is being collected in the backend to give you an accurate recommendation. Right? Now, it also gives information about which each of these databases are online or not, which is a good thing. Now, we have done the discovery. Before we get started with the detailed assessments, let us quickly check cost-wise if it even makes us a sense to move to cloud or not. To understand that, let us create a business case. Let us build the business case using the build business case experience here. Enter the business case details, the name and the other details. The region, the target region into which you would like to migrate your on-premises estate to in Azure. And then the interesting part is, it asks you for the migration strategy. What is a migration strategy? When all of us think about migration to cloud, we have specific objectives in mind. We want to achieve something. Some of us want to move to cloud to optimize cost. Some want to move to cloud to reduce the manageability, so we want to move to PaaS. We want to move our infrastructure as is into cloud, so we can choose IaaS. So these are different migration strategies that business case allows you to select. How does it influence the business case that gets generated? It tells you, based on whatever strategy you choose, it gives you a recommendation and the cost assessment based on the strategy that you choose. And how does it pan out, how does it look like, is something that we'll go through in a moment. Yes, please.
The data, is it on both the appliance server and in the cloud?
Yeah, the discovery information is uploaded to the cloud so that we can run the assessment information there. The appliance collects the data and then uploads it to the cloud.
I have another question.
Sure, please.
And what if you only, like, I'm guessing this is for like a company as a whole.
Right.
Maybe it will make sense.
Right.
But if we have, I work for a law firm,
Mhm.
we're not ready to have everything in the cloud, ClientGen and whatnot. But we need to start, somewhere. And so what if we have, just a few applications and databases that we would like to try it on and, have an estimate on? Can you pick and choose or just choose like a range of servers? Or can you feed the tool like IPs or server names that you want to do the analysis on pretty much?
Yes, yes, you can do that. And I'll show you the experience where you can do that. You can cherry pick the servers that you want to assess and discover on. You can do that. So let us go ahead and create the business case. For demo purposes, I've created a business case already because it takes time to process all of that information. Let us go through the pre-created business case here. Right, you can access the business cases by clicking on the number below the, and this is the business case that we created. Voila, this is how it looks like. Right, it gives you a total cost of ownership comparison between your on-premises and Azure estate. Right, as you can see here, with on-premises, you're going to save about $2.3 million by migrating to cloud. That's what the business case assessment says. And it also gives you a cost or the savings projection, right? Year on year, how much savings are you going to have, and what are the current savings, current costs, and the future savings and future costs. And if you were to bring the existing the SQL Server and Windows licenses, this is how much you would save, right? It also gives the discovery insights information, like how many servers were discovered, how many Hyper-V servers were discovered, and OS distribution, by the workload distribution, so on and so forth. It also gives information on how many of these SQL servers have license support versus not, which version, all of those insights information. Now, if you want to get a level down further and understand the breakup of this cost and how the savings are being accrued, you can go to that on-premises versus Azure tab, and you will get the cost saving information broken down by categories. And it also, like you can see, it breaks down the savings and cost by compute, storage, network, security, so on and so forth. It also gives an overview information on what are the total savings and what is the, what is the factor by which you would save by moving to Azure. Now, if you want to understand it further, right, if you wanted to play out a scenario where if I were to migrate to IaaS, how my cost savings would look like. So business case would pre-generate all these reports for you, ready to access and consume. So what if I were to migrate to PaaS? What are my costs? What are my savings? All of this information is pre-created and made available to you so that you can do all of this analysis in one go and make the decision whether to migrate or not to migrate and which target to migrate to, right? So this is the Azure PaaS cost projections, and if you want to, and the readiness information as well, right? If you want to understand how many of my SQL servers or instances are ready for migration, if you click on that View Details button here, it will show you that. Now, all of this information is generated based on some assumptions which are arrived at by analyzing the industry, right? Industry standards. Like what are the storage costs? What are the compute costs? These are industry standards. So based on these industry standards, we create a set of assumptions which are Azure specific assumptions and the on-premises specific assumptions, and we build a business case using that. If you want to modify any of these assumptions that are very pertinent to your scenario, you can modify that and get the updated business case accordingly. And one thing I would like to highlight here is facilities cost is something that we cannot model because it's very diverse. It can vary significantly. So if you have information about your facilities cost, you can enter that. Or if you think any of these standards are not applicable to you, you can modify any of these assumptions and you will get a new business case report based on your updated assumptions. Now, we have done the business case and we are clear that movement to Azure is going to save me a lot of money. Now, I want to get started with Azure and I want to see where should I migrate to an Azure. Right? This is where we'll get started with the assessment. This is a SQL Server assessment, so let's click on Assess and then Azure SQL Assessment. You create the assessment project by selecting the name and the discovery source is that. And here are the assumption settings, assessment settings that you can configure. The settings that you see on the top are standard, the region where you want to, the target region and all of that. And if you have AHP, right, if you have existing SQL Server licenses or Windows Server licenses, would you bring them to cloud? Would you like to get a benefit out of it? The most important thing I would like to highlight here is the sizing criteria. Now, there are two ways in which we can do the assessment. One, for example, let's take a car, right? You want to make a purchase decision. You can make an assessment by looking at the car perfunctorily and saying, hey, everything looks good. The other way you want to do is, if you want to be really thorough about the assessment that you're making, you pop up the hood, look everything that is inside, see how it is looking like, how it is working like, and then you make an assessment. Azure Migrate offers something similar. So it gives you two variants of assessments. One is the performance-based assessment sizing criteria, and the other is on-premises, as on-premises sizing criteria. The recommended approach is to use the performance-based, because what it looks at is the performance data of each and every server that is running. It looks at the resource utilization. It looks at the workload patterns and gives you a recommendation based on that. Now, for you to seamlessly do that, one thing as a user you have to do is provide the right credentials so that Azure Migrate Discovery can connect to the server and fetch that data. Once you do that, performance is going to give you a right-sized recommendation that would optimize for your performance and cost needs. Right? That is performance-based, and if for some reason you are happy, okay, yeah, please. Yeah.
The permission, is it admin-wise from the whole SQL Server and Windows?
We do not have to give the admin rights. They're not absolutely needed. Any minimum user which has the permissions to get the server metadata and the performance data is enough. We do not have to provide the admin credentials per se. But usually when the discovery happens, everyone tends to give, because these are run by IT admins, so they tend to give their credentials, but it is not mandatory. Any user privilege, user role that can get the performance data is good enough. Otherwise, if you do not want a performance-based assessment, you can always go with the as on-premises, which actually means we will give you a recommendation that matches with what exists here on-prem. If you have 10 cores, we're going to give you a 10 vCore recommendation on cloud, right? And then the other thing I would like to highlight here is the migration strategy. Again, when we are migrating to cloud, organizations have different priorities. Okay, so you can select the performance history as well, whether you want to do the discovery for 1 day, 1 week, or 1 month, right? And let me quickly glance over, sorry. Okay. Sorry, I jumped ahead and. Sorry, 1 minute, having a trouble with this. So do you have the, this is the folder?
No, but not all videos are there.
Okay. Sorry for this, Nafu, just give me 1 minute.
I think we can
Go to the downloads, right?
No, we can do something like this. We can project this, copy this, and then play the demo.
It's in downloads, right? Yeah.
Oh, you have it? Oh, perfect. But you have to project this one. Yeah, this should work.
Right. So sorry for that. Here is the migration strategy thing I was highlighting about, right? You might want to minimize the cost or modernize to PaaS, right? Your strategy might be different. Sometimes you would want to migrate to Azure SQL DB, or sometimes you would want to migrate to SQL MI. So you can choose any of these strategies, any of these as your strategy. And based on the strategy that you choose, Azure Migrate is going to give you a recommendation, right? What is the most optimal choice for the strategy that you chose. And here is where you can select these servers that you want to perform assessment on. Right? If you see the list down here, you can select 1, 2, or all of them on which you want to perform the assessment. Yes, please.
One question, what is if this database is like a data warehouse and we have SSIS packages, are they also included in this assessment?
So when you say
We have our on-premise server, like big database and kind list of SSIS packages.
mhm. So this is just an assessment, right? So we are trying to assess the workloads as of now. We're talking about moving all the packages and functions that comes as part of the migration, right? So that is something we'll handle as part of the database migration service. So here we selected all of them. To answer your earlier question on whether I can select 1 or 2, so you can select 1 or 2 or all of them. Right? Now let us go to the pre-created assessment and see how it actually looks like and what information does it provide. Right? So here is the high-level information. What are the total number of servers, out of which how many SQL instances exist, how many user databases, how many of them have failover cluster instances, and how many of them have availability groups. And how many of the instances that are discovered are ready for migration? All of them are ready for migration, in this case 148. How many of them are ready to be migrated to, how many of them are recommended to migrate to Azure SQL VM? 142. And 6 are recommended to migrate to Azure SQL DB. As you can see, our recommendation is not to migrate to only one solution. It is not rigid that way. We do complete analysis, and based on the data patterns that we understand, we give a diverse set of recommendations for the same migration. It's not that you have to migrate to only one target. It can be a combination of targets that you can migrate to. We also automatically do the assessment against various other targets like MI and database without you having to ask it, so that the information is ready and available for you, and you can go through it and make a decision whether you want to use that or not. Yes, please.
Question. So in the previous screen, you said all of the databases of all the servers were ready to be migrated. What can make it not ready to be migrated? What is the criteria?
Right. Let us take an example. Right. For example, a SQL Server has about 800 databases on premises. Right? And we are recommending for MI, or let us do the readiness assessment against MI, managed instance. Managed instance cannot have 800 databases underneath it. So if there are any features that are not on the on-premises that are not compatible with the Azure SQL, that is when those are not ready for migration. Right? The suitability is not there. Feature compatibility is not there.
So you have to do some kind of refactoring or maybe some other alternative or mitigate that so that it can become ready to migrate.
So it will tell you that, let's say, I don't know, a couple of them were not ready. Can you click on that to see what are the recommendations?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's what I'm going to take you through. So right now we are going to go through the assessment readiness report. Right? I clicked on the assessment readiness report here. And let us see, here you have the targets, right? MI readiness, VM readiness, and DB readiness. For MI, especially here, it says not ready. Let us go and try to understand why it is not ready, right? What are the problems that I'm seeing? Click on not ready. And you will see the list of issues that are associated with MI. And within the same experience, you can also view the issues with any, if any, against the DB and VM as well. Right, here is the instance, and here are the issues with that particular instance. Right? This is one instance. And under the database, under that instance, if there are multiple databases and there are issues against each of those databases, you can view the list of issues against each of these databases. So not at the instance level, we go down to the level of database and give you granular information on what those issues are. And in the same view, you can view the list of issues against MI, DB, and the SQL VM as well, all in one place. You don't have to go do it again and again, right? And we also give the recommendation, what is the recommended target, recommended configuration, and the suggested migration tool, recommended configuration both for storage as well as the compute, and then the sizing criteria. So as you can see, we selected performance-based sizing criteria when we created this assessment. But some of these servers has as on-premises assessment. What happened there? Have I not selected on performance-based? I have selected. but it fall back to as on-premises assessment because it was not able to connect and get the required details. I would like to understand what are the issues, what are the reasons for not being able to connect. I click on this unknown and it will take me to a page which will show me a list of all the errors that cause this problem, and it gives you a resolution as well, right? Here are the affected objects, and here are the number of servers. If you click on the number of servers, for each and every server, it will tell you what is the problem and what is the recommended course of action that you can take to resolve that problem. Right? Here, in this case, the server is powered off state. So if you power on the server, I think you will be able to do the discovery. And once you course correct that, you recalculate the assessment and you will get the updated assessment. Right? And you get the cost estimate information as well. All right, so this is assessment, discovery and assessment at a high level. Let me quickly take you through the second part of the demo, which is the DMS online migration. So I will go a little fast because I want my friend Ravinder also to cover a couple of topics. But we will talk about the migration now, right? And how is migration performed? Do I need to, Ravinder, quick question, do I need to project this again? Okay,
no,
it's
just
visible.
click on.
Cool. All right.
Should be fine.
So what is Azure Database Migration Service? Azure Database Migration Service is a completely managed cloud service that lets you seamlessly export your database from on-premises SQL Server into cloud without any downtime or with very minimal downtime, right? And how can I use this Azure DMS? I can use it through Portal. I can use it through Azure Data Studio extension. I can use it using PowerShell or CLI. And this service basically lets me, using this service, you can export your data or migrate your database to SQL MI or VM using the backups. Or if you want to migrate to DB, you can use the logical data movement option as well. Now, how does it actually work? So Azure DMS, Database Migration Service, DMS it is called, uses Azure Data Factory underneath it, which in turn uses self-hosted integration runtime, which ensures there is a connectivity between your on-premises SQL Server and Azure SQL. What it also does is, if you have some backups stored in your network file share, it will pump or migrate those backups into Azure storage account so that your DMS can read the backups from that Azure storage account and restore the database. So it is SHIR, or the self-hosted integration runtime, acts as that plumbing between your on-premises and your on-premises SQL Server and your Azure SQL target. And you can perform both offline and online migrations. In case you prefer to have a very minimal downtime, you can go with the online migration. If you're not very particular about that, you can go with the offline migration option. Right. Another thing that Azure DMS does beautifully is it will do the schema migration in line. You don't have to switch experiences to migrate your schema separately and data separately. All of it is done seamlessly within the same experience. You don't have to go anywhere. Right? That's the beauty of this tool. Now let us go through the Azure DMS demo. So here is the on-premises SQL Server from which I would like to migrate two databases, a HR database and the orders database. I'm connected to this on-premises data via Azure SSMS, right? And I'm going to use the Azure Data Studio extension to perform this migration. Sorry, I haven't played this. To speed up the demo a little bit, I'm going to play the video this way so that we can skip parts that are not needed. Do I have to project it? Yeah. Please project it once more.
Should be fine.
Right. Okay.
And this would, the question which you asked, so this experience would actually allow you to pick and choose one single server and migrate it.
One single database, one single server, you can do that. So here is the Azure Data Studio extension. To get started, I'll go to the marketplace in Azure Data Studio, search for the Azure SQL Migration extension, click on install, and I'm ready to get started with the migration through Azure Data Studio. So here are the databases that I want to migrate. Let us quickly go through the databases and the tables underneath it. These are the tables. Let us get started with the migration. Click on Azure SQL Migration, and then click on the Migrate to Azure SQL. It will open the migration experience. Select the database source database. In this case, we are already connected to it. You need to select under the source SQL Server, select the databases that you want to migrate. These are the two databases that we want to migrate. Click on Next. Now the assessment is in progress. Azure Database Migration, DMS, right, Database Migration Service, in addition to the actual data migration, it also does the assessment. So if you have servers, right, if you want to migrate only one server, you don't have to go through Azure Migrate. You can just install ADS in your local machine and run assessment against that SQL Server. It will give you the same quality of recommendations that you get using Azure Migrate. And this is especially useful when you have to migrate one database at a time, right? One server at a time. So you can also, in fact, here in the previous screen, it gave you the readiness information across for all targets. If you go back and pause here for a minute, it gave you the readiness information across for various Azure SQL targets, right? For PaaS, for managed instance, and for IaaS. And it also gives you the option to upload the performance data, right? Or collect the performance data. The start data collection option here lets you collect the performance data of your local SQL Server, and it will give you the SKU recommendations as well, like what we saw in Azure Migrate. And we have improved this experience a lot to make it inline so that you don't have to jump forward and backward. You can select the target that you want to migrate to. It will give the assessment and the readiness information for against each of these targets. For example, against Azure SQL database, one of the databases is not ready for migration to Azure SQL DB. And the reason for that is displayed here. You can click on any one of these findings here, and you'll be able to find out the reason as well as the resolution on how to solve that problem. So let me select Azure SQL MI. I don't see any issues with that. So let me kickstart migration to Azure SQL MI. Select both the databases and click on Next. Provide the resource group information, the target information, right? The target MI to which you want to migrate to. One thing I would like to highlight here is, for now or currently, you have to provision your target, and the provision target will appear here. That's how the migration is. But we want to take it to the phase where the target is also provisioned automatically. For now, this is a manual step that you have to do. Right? Now, let us look at the available options here. Right? Once you selected the target, you can either opt to perform online migration or offline migration. If minimizing downtime is your highest priority, you can select online migration. Otherwise, you can prefer offline migration. And within online migration, you can put the backups in Azure storage and restore from those backups. Or you can put it in your network file share. Azure DMS will make sure that those backups are taken into the Azure DMS and restored from there. So in this scenario, I'm going to use the network file share option because I want my backups to be secure. I don't want them to leave my boundary. So I keep it there. I choose the network share option, and then it asks me for further information, right? So like I mentioned earlier, if you listen to it, there is a self-hosted integration runtime which acts as a connecting bridge between your on-premises network share and your SQL target, Azure SQL target. So if you have your backup sitting in network file share, you need to install your SHIR, self-hosted integration runtime, which can access both your source database, network file share, and the Azure SQL database. Right? To do that, first you have to create a new DMS service, or if you have already created a service, you can register the self-hosted integrated runtime with that. In this scenario, I'm creating a new DMS service just to demonstrate the experience for you. Create the new DMS service. And as an once you create the new DMS service, it will give you a couple of keys using which you can register the SHIR with this particular DMS service, right? So I already downloaded the SHIR, and here is how the UI would look like. I paste the key that I copy from here, and once you enter the key, it will automatically, the SHIR will be automatically registered with this DMS. The good thing about this SHIR is it's a scalable infrastructure. It basically acts as a gateway in a way to export the data into Azure SQL Target. Now, if one is not enough, or you'd like to scale out, you can install multiple SHIRs on multiple nodes and speed up your migration process. It's a scalable approach in that way, and it also secures the data that is passing through SHIR. Right here, now it is registered, and we are good to go with migration. So before we get started, let us run a whole bunch of validations to make sure that everything is configured correctly. And here is a stand that we took. We don't want users to go ahead, realize that there are errors, and then come back again. So what we have done is we have created a step called run validation. You enter all the details, right? The network file share path, the resource group details, storage account details, and everything, and you run validation. We'll make sure that everything is correctly plumbed, connected, and ready to go. And once everything is ready, you are ready to migrate the database from your on-prem SQL Server into Azure SQL. And here is a summary. Click on Start Migration to get started with the migration. Once the migration job starts, you will be able to view the status of the job very accurately, right? Down to the level of whether the backup is getting restored, moved, arrived. So you'll be able to view the restore information or the migration information down to the level of granularity of the backup movement and what percentage has moved, so on and so forth. Now you can track the progress either from the ADS extension that you have, or you can track the progress through the portal. Yes, please.
Is the service creating a backup then from the database?
No. So you have the backup already. That's what I was, sorry, I skipped through the demo to save on time. What we did is we moved, the backup exists on the network file share, which is within your own network. Using SHIR, self-hosted integrated runtime, we moved the backup from your network file share into Azure storage. And from Azure storage, we are actually restoring, the Azure DMS is restoring the database.
And in this time of migration, should any other backup job stop?
No, not really.
It can go,
yes. There is no need to stop any of that. And in fact, this is being restored using backups, right? So your no workload on your on-premises SQL Server need to be disturbed for that, because if you've already taken backups. If you prefer online migration, the backups that are being taken, you can pipe them to a network file share automatically, right, through external tools. And Azure DMS will make sure that it is restoring those backups while they're being generated and moved. So you do not have to worry about any performance impact on your on-premises SQL Server source target. Right? So in the interest of time, I'm going to skip a few parts where I demonstrate clearly the different steps of migration and all of that. Probably after this session, we can connect offline, and I can show you details. Yeah, please.
This tool, is it able to identify the target capacities that I can start with for CPUs and memory?
Yes, it does.
And because my server really is only in use in the middle of the night.
Right.
So how long does that take before it's able to determine that, or is it just looking at logs to determine?
Sorry, I would like to understand the question a little better. So are you saying that you would like this tool to assess what are the available resources on your target?
Queue recommendation.
So when, is that the question? Sorry.
Yeah. I don't know to start with one CPU or 72
Right.
in Azure.
Right. So that's what the assessment tool is going to give you a recommendation for, right? Based on how your on-premises database is, how is your workload pattern, it will give you a SKU recommendation. How many vCores does your target need to have? So it will give you that recommendation, and you can provision the database according to that recommendation. Right? Does it answer your question?
And if I may add, Sorry, Sudhir. So if your workload is very predictable, which is a rare case in database world, then you can definitely run it for that period and be assured that, okay, this is how my workload behaves, and the SKU recommendation absolutely actually takes care of it. But that's usually not the case. And if you have the flexibility, maybe give it more time so that you consider your business days, your weekend maintenance, if any, and then let it run for a week. And if there are, I mean, typically customers have periods where they are running something quarterly or every 15 days, if you want to cater to that. So there are all these, it depends kind of situations. So based on that, you can let it run for a long time or focus on specific that period and maybe go with some plus minus in terms of your provisioning.
Thank you.
Yeah, please.
Okay, so after, because you can imagine, I mean, even though you're finally migrated everything, you would like to, I mean, I don't think any company would be comfortable doing, a final, you will have to stage it first, you need to make sure the permissions are set up, you need to make sure that your application can connect, your users can connect. So in this scenario, this would be like a staging, like, is this like first phase, or this, because I'm starting to think like I have a half a terabyte database, I do the first thing, I stage it, and then when I'm ready to actually go live, do I have to follow the same procedure, or is something different?
It's,
How do I?
so you're talking about the application connectivity and all those verifications, right, after the
Yes,
migration stage.
On-prem, like I'm saying, probably I only want my database to be in the cloud for now, and not migrate everything else. My web servers, my application servers will be on-prem, my users, like,
Right.
you know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah, yeah. So you can do that. I mean, the connectivity will not be a problem. So you will be able to do that.
How do you handle permission?
So if I may add,
Yeah, please.
So migration, like Sudhir and I were discussing, so migration is a journey which is typically not a one-day journey. So you, so you have to have a plan, and typically what we suggest is you would have within your on-premise infrastructure, if you have the flexibility of having different environments which cater to dev, test, QA, and then prod, so that's where you start with. So you start with your dev, and then you have a very small database there. You get used to the recipe of migration there. With the small size, you iron out any issues which you face there, and then the connectivity string is simple. You can use the connectivity connection string of the database, apply it to your application, and see if it connects, if your functional tests are passing. Then you move on to the next stage where you have more data, do some more rigorous testing, and then you are comfortable at that stage. And finally, the only thing which is left after that is, okay, now I have to migrate the actual data. And when you have to migrate the actual data, the size of the data would come in picture, how much downtime, because this is an offline migration scenario. So how much downtime can you afford? Or if there is strict necessity of an online migration, then how do you cater for that? We will talk about this later in this session about that a little bit. And everything along with that, permissions, migration, how your application will connect to it. So that all will come along with. But definitely, what we are showing is you have to do this again and again, starting from your lowest environment, which would be dev. And once you are comfortable, all the stakeholders feel fine, then you can go ahead and do it on the production.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Ravinder. That's beautifully answered. The rest is about tracking the progress. In the interest of time, I will skip that, and let me switch back to this slide. I will briefly talk about the new stuff that we are building in the tooling ecosystem, new capabilities that we are building. So like I mentioned, the as on-premises assessment, right, performance with performance fallback. So with this feature, basically you will get as on-premises assessment recommendation on Azure SQL, right? Earlier we were recommending lift and shift. Now going forward, we are going to recommend SQL VM, which will be a better fit for you. Right? In addition to that, we have the business case that we've gone through, which is in public preview. I also talked about the schema migration, where you can do everything in line without having to switch experiences. And new addition is we are recommending premium SSD v2 as part of this entire experience, which is a new hardware, which reduces your costs significantly. This is coming in as one of the recommendations through the tool. And we have greatly improved the portal and the migration extension experience, which you have seen in those demos. Now, we understand the migration is not a straightforward journey, and not everything can be solved using tools. Sometimes the scenarios are very complex, and you would need hand-holding and custom solutions to take you through that migration journey and make sure you're successful, right? And that's where my friend Ravinder is going to come and talk about the custom solutions that we are building and how we can handle over the customers, you, into migrating to Azure SQL.
Thanks, Sudesh. Yeah. So definitely some of the questions which you were asking, I'll touch upon that. Till now, Sudhir has shown how the customer migration journey of that database on your on-premise Azure SQL to Azure should be. When we start having these conversations with customers, there have been scenarios where we have migrated customers successfully within a month because it was very simple, straightforward migration. And there have been some of the discussions which are ongoing where we are going through all these stages, still qualifying, and it has been a year. And we are making those small changes because the environment is either very, very critical, or the data is too large, or all of these actually coincide, and we have to consider so many factors before we even take that first step of migration. So there are several types of workloads possible on your on-premise, and some of these are listed here. Then there are some workload qualifiers. Definitely size of database on the top is written there, because now 16 TB is just a number written because on SQL MI currently you can actually have 16 TB database at max. But if it is beyond that, then what should be done? Below that also there are so many options. Then you have mix of read-write access profiles. This, when you are on-premise, typically you are actually having everything done on your primary. If it is an always-on kind of a scenario, you might have read intent and you have several replicas where your read is separated and your write is only on the primary. We have that facility on Azure as well. While I touch any more workload qualifier, on the right side, we definitely want to say that we have SQL DB Hyperscale. We have managed instance as an offering, and also in SQL IS. And within SQL IS as well, if you start seeing the SKUs, there are so many SKUs which cater to specific type of workloads, whether it is compute heavy, whether it is memory optimized, or whether it is a combination of high IOPS with high memory. And all these workload qualifiers actually help us have that conversation and help you to decide on what is the right SKU to land on the right side. Now, moving on, we have tried to list down few of the complex migration patterns which we have seen, which are very frequent, which come in every discussion. So you might see the right sizing. Every discussion starts with right sizing of SQL targets. And Sudhir has shown that there are tools available where you can actually go and get that performance information from your on-premise infrastructure and start thinking about, okay, what is the right target? But there are so many exceptions. And to list few, I would say that we have had customers who are running 10 DB on NVMe disk. And that is a very specific type of workload. And you have to see what actually can cater to that in Azure. And then I was having discussion with another customer where over the years they have grown enormously, and they just created small databases for each of the additional functionality which was required for their application because it was easy to build. And then they have cross-joined across tens of databases. So there is a need to refactor. Not everything, even though it says it is ready, you can migrate it, but there are so many situations. And there are other customers who are reading data from databases, doing everything in TempDB, and then generating and putting into another table. So I mean, there are so many possibilities which feel right at that point of time. And within your on-premise, you have a lot of control. You can throw resources onto the server and fix that problem. If log is an issue, you can create another log. We don't recommend it, but you would see databases having multiple transaction log files, even though that is a circular thing. You would have TempDB sitting on several drives. I mean, so many other such situations. Next is at-scale migration. So we have worked with customers where they want to migrate thousands of databases across globe at scale continuously in an automated fashion. So we work closely, we help them to have this custom solutions created. That's where our team works closely with customers. So we have solutions in there. The red ones are the ones which I want to talk about in the interest of time, so I'll move quickly. So zero downtime with VLDB and post-migration data validation is also an essential thing where you want to make sure that between source and target, that data integrity is there. That gives you a surety that, okay, everything is migrated correctly. And post-migration performance optimization and stabilization, which you were talking about as well. When you land on Azure, the story is not complete there. You still want to ensure that you are on the right SKU, even though if it is behaving perfectly today normally, does it fit in all your business requirements, whether it is cost, whether it is SLA, latency, right zone from your application. So many things can factor in, and Windows authentication Kerberos is also another factor, which is a thing which we support in SQL MI, but I won't touch it right now. So I'll quickly move to the first one, database compare utility. This is a custom IP written by our database migration team. It is a simple multi-threaded C# console application. What we do is we create hashes of all the columns. We create hashes of large strings, and then we compare across source and targets. And we give you any mismatches which are happening. We print it out into a mismatch log table. It has capability to correct mismatches, but that's limited. We are working on it if we add on to it. The sources which are supported are listed there: SQL Server, Oracle, DB2, MySQL, Postgres, Teradata, and Reza. Target is also there. We have recently added PostgreSQL due to a lot of demand as well. So we have added that. Otherwise, all SQL sources are supported, targets are supported. In terms of configuration, the major configuration you need to do is an app config file. I'll move to the demo so that it is visible. Hopefully, it is visible. OK, so I've taken Oracle here because SQL was very simple, so that I show a little bit advanced comparison as well. So this is the HR databases. There are tables here. So I'm showing that, OK, we run a select star. There are rows listed down. Now, this is publicly available, this IP. You can actually go ahead and download it, aka.ms database compare. We'll give a link here as well in the presentation. Once it is downloaded, it is a zipped folder. You can unzip it. And OK, let's wait. OK, so that's database compare. Then you can actually open the config file. Within the config file, there are a few key things. So it comes preloaded with everything required to compare between SQL to SQL. You just need to specify SQL, source SQL and target SQL connection. If it is not SQL, it also comes with a very neatly written step-by-step download guide, which explains all this. So you specify here target, which is your SQL. You specify your user ID and password. For Oracle, you have to uncomment something. It is already there. All you need to do is, if you're doing comparison to Netezza, you have to uncomment Netezza specific, because there are some configuration configs which are essential in terms of database data type compatibility. You specify your user ID for your target. You specify your top secret password there, and move, and then you can launch it. Yeah, one more step before this. We don't supply Oracle DLL driver here, because as part of licensing, we can't package it along with the tool. It is freely available, and we have the link to download that within the download guide as well. So you launch this, and the moment you launch it, immediately it generates this output in the console, and it shows you that how many rows are different, how many rows are mismatched. So when you are doing any such source to target migration, you can actually run this and identify what differences are there. We currently limit it to 25 rows, 25 mismatches right now, but you can go on. There is a config parameter which is again specified. You can go on and compare the whole table. We generate mismatch log as well. Right now this is in debug mode. That's why it is very, very verbose. But if you see here, we are printing, okay, there is a difference. Object types are different. Hash mismatch. So we are printing the hash. So source value is here. It is ending by 1, and the target value is ending by 0. So similarly, there is another row here at the bottom as well. So you can actually run this tool and identify differences after you have migrated among all those source target pairs which we have seen. So we are adding some more functionality. It will be great if you can use, send us feedback. There is contact information there as well. So I'll move. So this was one customer case study, RevenueWell. They are a well-known SaaS provider. They have a dental marketing platform. Over 12,000 dental offices use that. They have recently migrated from On-prem SQL to Azure SQL Database, and then they started growing rapidly, and then they decided, okay, it's time to use Azure Database Hyperscale. So we helped them with all these transitions. After hyperscale, if you see this, just one advantage of hyperscale is written here, because hyperscale can take snapshot-based database copy restores. It is near instantaneous creation of new servers. So if you have all those environment creation scenarios where you continuously copy your database and create new environment for testing or something, and it can do it immediately in the region. So for large databases, terabytes of data as well, this is near instantaneous, which is a great thing, and they have doubled their user base within 18 months. So moving on quickly. Sorry, you can stop me anytime and ask questions if. So this is another very popular custom IP. This is not publicly available. You can talk to us if you plan to use this. This caters to all those scenarios where you have very large database, you need near zero downtime, and you need a lot of flexibility. Now, what we have done here is, in very simple, we use Spark, and Spark workload can be run on Azure Synapse or on Azure Databricks. The demo here is on Azure Databricks. What we do here is we use Spark MPP architecture to pull your data from your source server based on the flexibility which you want. If there is any requirement to process it on this intermediate Spark infrastructure, you can do that quickly in memory, and then we write it to the target. We write it using Apache Spark connector for SQL Server and Azure SQL. This is 15x. We have TPCC benchmark on this. It is 15x faster than the generic JDBC connector. We have moved a critical customer, a lot of customers' data in terabytes. There is one public case study as well on this one from a customer, so I can refer that. Let me show you the demo so that we have 5 minutes here. So this is the workspace. What we do is we provide you everything. This is Databricks workspace. So within the workspace, we will help you set up some notebooks and some configuration notebooks. Once all that is set up, you can specify the scalability, because Spark allows you to scale between min-max nodes, so you can do that. We have chosen very basic DS3 V2 VM, which will be your data nodes or compute nodes. After this is done, let's move forward. So these are the notebooks. This uses CDC. That is an essential thing if you have to use near zero downtime cutover of data. This is the source SQL. I have kept rows very simple, one simple customer with 10 rows so that we can quickly run through it. This is the target. On target, you definitely need to create that schema, and when I'm saying schema, it should be just the base table without any indexes constraints so that we can load data in parallel. This is the UI, and we have listed down steps so that it is easy to operate. Earlier in our early customer engagements, we had this via script. So right now it is a rough UI, but it helps. So first one is to set up some procedures, objects, views on your source SQL or whatever your source is. The second one is to do a similar kind of config setup on the target. Here what we are showing you is you have to choose your choose your tables which you need to migrate. I'm showing you this through UI, but that will not be a typical experience when you have thousands of databases to migrate. So we have an import here. If you click on import, you can choose a pre-created CSV. All your tables with all this information can be loaded immediately. And to simplify it further, we also have a script which can actually generate this information from your database. This is the script. You run the script, all the information is created so that you don't have to do anything manually, and you can immediately upload it within the tool. Okay, so I'm seeing how many minutes we have.
We have 4 more minutes to go.
Okay. So this is the source. At the source, after that is done, so there are some prerequisites at source which you need to do. So that is the 4th step. So 1, 2, 3 is done. When we come to the 4th step, we have to do that. After that, okay. So this is the start cluster. So the idea of this UI is you don't need to go to several interfaces and perform and take this action. For example, start cluster, you had to go to Databricks and do that. Or for other of these source and target setup as well, you had to connect to individual SQL servers, go to those databases, find those procedures which we are suggesting and run those. That's why we have actually brought all this together in this single simple UI. Now here as well, once everything is set up, you can start your configuration script. It will run this configuration on the Spark, which is this one, and you don't need to go here. You will get the job ID returned here, and you will know that, okay, if it has successfully executed, you will see the status there. So again, I'm just showing that you can go there, but it is not necessary. You can do everything from this simple UI. After your configuration is complete, you can run initial load. Now, there are several of these notebooks. The idea here is, if I may, we allow you the flexibility. So when we were dealing with certain customers, they had their source database, which was very critical and which was used heavily. So there were short periods only when we could actually fetch data. So you can actually scale or spread this migration across weeks, selectively using those tables within these notebooks and fetch data based on these conditions so that you don't impact the source database at all. And in certain cases, we have seen customers where they have a lot of static information in the source database, which are large tables, and we can actually stage those off-peak hours and then migrate the actual data which is changing using CDC-based approach here. So it has a lot of flexibility. We handhold you through the whole scenario if there is such a need. So we can definitely do that. I'll move to the next one. There are several. I've just picked 2. There are several of our custom IPs. I have listed 5. Data archiving strategies is another one. SQL Server replication as a tool talks about how to take the snapshot at the source, use remote snapshot delivery to migrate to Azure. So that, again, the link is in detail. Sorry, they didn't have enough time. And then MI link is another option. This is a great, you might have seen this in Keynote as well. So we have automated this whole experience using script. You don't need to do anything. We do even the validation and the whole creation. And this allows you even the opportunity to test Azure and have failback capability to on-premise without worrying about anything. These are some of our resources and contact information, so you can use that. You have this slide within the session. You can download it as well. And yeah, thank you for asking questions and having that patience to stay throughout this long session. And yeah, feel free to evaluate the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
And we'll be at the booth. If you have any questions, if you want to ask anything, feel free to visit us.
Yes, going right there. And we have a session about Oracle to PG SQL migration as well, Oracle to SQL migration as well, tomorrow scheduled. So if you're interested in that, please do join us for that session as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.